Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call this November 21st, 2019 meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee to order. Time is 1:30. Do a roll call. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Mr. Schutte. Present. Ms. Heil.
Here.
All right. I think we have a quorum. So we will proceed. Craig, will you please do the public involvement?
Yes, all AMATS meetings are open to the public. If we have a business item, we'll have presentation by staff or consultant. At that point, the committee will be given a chance to discuss it, and after that, the public will be invited to comment on business items.
Thank you, Craig. All right. Do we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Weddleton asked me if we could have an update on the Abbott Road project.
O'Malley.
I'm sorry, O'Malley Road project. May come up anyway, but in case, I just want to make sure that we had a chance to discuss it as an info item.
Thanks.
I think we have someone here that might be able to speak to that. We'll find out. Okay, any objections to adopting the agenda as motion?
Just a question, is that under number 6, like a new 6B, Mr. Weddleton?
Wherever that's
Project
under
plan
the
update.
attack.
Okay. All right.
Again, I'm getting asked about it.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
All right.
what I have, John, you say.
All right, so other than that, no objections to adopting the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Okay. So we have before us the minutes from the August 22nd, 2019 AMATS Policy Committee meeting for approval. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Gosh.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any changes or discussions to the minutes? None. Any objections to approving the minutes with Rick?
I got hacked. Someone's taking pictures of me.
Any objections to approving the minutes as stated? Hearing none, the August 22nd, 2019 minutes are approved. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 5A, the 2020-2021 Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP narrative. Craig, will you be presenting?
Yes. So just as a reminder, this is one of our 4 major plans that we're required to do. This is the work program that talks about how staff is going to be spending their time in the next 2 years. Again, this is not the tip that talks about the capital projects that we will build or plans that we have. This is what is the staff going to do, and the staff includes the 4 planners that work for me and an accountant, and then it also includes the DOT AMATS area planner. So that's the staff that includes. It also has some time spent for the traffic counts in the traffic department. They do the data that counts on the roads that feed our model. So for the most part, it's staff time in the next 2 years. What are we going to do? And so that is what is before you. It was posted a week ago as per our regular rules. We took this to the TAC 2 weeks ago, and they recommended a 30-day public review. And that's what we're asking you today, to release this for 30 days for public review, come back, and then have the approval. The approval will rest with you in the end. So happy to answer questions. It's basically updated with most of the stuff that we were doing this year. We've added a couple of the plans that were in the tip. So the TDM study for the UMed area is in there. There's a TISMO plan, which is, I forget the acronym, but
Aaron, what's the acronym?
Transportation System Management and Operations.
Thank you.
I forgot the T. I should have known. It's always transportation, right? So that's called TISMO, and so we'll be managing that in-house or in the AMATS group, and the staff time on that is reflected in there. So.
I have a question.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committees?
So, so is this narrative that you're proposing to go out for a 30-day public comment period based on the budget that we're supposed to approve?
Yes, so what we get is we are required by our operating agreement to get an allocation of what we are expected to have in the next year for our budget. If you remember, we have a 2-year work program, but we only have a 1-year budget. our allocation is given to us annually, October 1st. And our public enrollment plan requires that we have our narrative out for 30 days, but not our budget. Typically, if we need to, we could move monies around later, but for the most part, they're pretty standard it's pretty dialed in on how much time my staff thinks they're going to be spending on each task. I guess it's possible that could change, and we can certainly amend the budget if need be. But yes, it's based on the total allocation that we have broken down by what my staff thinks each task that they're going to be working on will take.
So what are we asking the public to look at and talk about if anything they change or add, we've already approved the budget?
We're asking them to look at the narrative that we have and does it make sense, the tasks that we have in there.
Okay.
Mr. Rosen?
A couple things, so this goes out to the public 30 days, so would we approve it in January, or does this have to
This would,
December?
So the plan is the December timeframe. If it, I haven't looked at the exact calendar. It's possible that it can go into January. We have two actual budgets that are the AMATS budget. There's the AMATS budget, which is this that you'll see next, and it's broken down by task, and it has dollar figures for each task. We also have the budget that we enter into the assembly system so that the municipality accepts the money as a transfer from the state of Alaska as the pass-through grant. That budget simply shows, here's the dollar figure for all the staff, and here's the amount for maybe computers or software purchases, things of that nature. So it's not broken down by task. We need to get that budget approved as soon as possible because it's staff being paid starting January 1. So it's there are two different budgets, one that is kind of broken down by task and one that is not. And so that's the one that is really time sensitive, and that should be on your early December meeting, so.
Got two other points, if I might. So we just passed an ordinance that life safety roads are an area-wide thing, with the idea that we may use some AMATS money for some of those projects. So is that anywhere in here to take a look at those, prioritize those roads or?
Those
projects?
funds are capital funds, so that would be funds that would be in the tip.
But it would presumably put some work on you too, though, for your staff.
Yeah, so one of the tasks in the narrative is called the local planning task. It's kind of catch-all. So it could, we could work on that sort of thing. Typically, that task is for when we get a road project in and we're asked to comment on it, when we get a vacation of a right-of-way plan set that comes to the planning department, we're asked to look at that and see what we think about that and offer comments. Those are the kind of things that we charge to that local planning task 220. We have the ability to do a lot of kind of, more, not real specific or something that's not already in the task, we can do in that task.
Okay, and then you've been working on a new scoring system. Is
Yes.
that in here specifically?
Yeah, that's in the tip, it's task 120.
Okay,
We'll continue.
all right, thanks.
I have a follow-up to that. Is there any benefit to including, so one of the things that shook out from the effort to expand the capacity of the city to add these secondary or emergency access roads in more rural areas was the last time that this issue was looked at is now a decade stale, though still relevant, basically. Is there any room within the 200s, specifically sort of the special plans or special area plans, to add a item that specifically calls out maybe completing or updating the emergency access route study?
I guess we would have to look at, kind of a guesstimate of time that would be needed to do that task.
I know this was last minute, so I apologize.
Yeah, and so we would have to look at how much time that might take. And, we would, I think that is something we could generally fit in what we're doing if it's not going to take too much time. But it kind of sounds to me like that's a little bit bigger effort, and we would have to add a separate task on it and then add budget to it.
So may I ask a follow-up? So I agree that it's probably, I mean, it's an update to some existing work, but it's not something that you've accounted for, and you have a very full calendar as is. So I do agree that it's something that should be added as a separate item instead of trying to fold it up into existing work plans, which is why I've singled out the 200 section where we call out sort of those special efforts, special plans, and I see how it could be added as a additional item under those 200s. But I want to understand two things. One, the capacity of staff, and we may not be able to answer that today. And then number two, sort of a newbie question related to all this. There's a lot of charts in here that don't have funding next to the work items. And if you could help me understand why that is, again, I'll point you to the 200 section, which is the one I'm looking at now for this project. All of the special tasks under there do not have dollar amounts next to them, whereas a lot of other items in here do. So can you help me understand why that is?
So Aaron may need to add some flavor to this, but for the most part, we don't have an approved budget yet. We do know we have an approved TIP, so the projects that are getting funding from the TIP
Are in here.
should be in there, and the rest of them, we don't have an approved budget yet, so we're not really sure. You guys may change some funding around.
Okay.
When we build the budget, basically what we do is we look at, I'll ask, let's say it's a task that Aaron's going to work on, I'll ask him, how long do you think you might be spending on this over the course of the year? And if he says, I think it's going to be about a month, I can use the month time frame and multiply it by what his chargeable rate is, and it'll come up with, here's the dollar figure. If he's the only one that's going to be charging to that, I can just take that number and put it right in there, and it pencils out. So if we're going to add a smaller task, it's probably possible to do that. If we're going to add a task that's going to take 3 weeks to a month of his time, that's going to be a little more challenging to figure out what is he not going to do now that one full month will be dedicated to this.
I get that, and thank you for the explanation of why the missing pieces, or why the holes. Now that I look at the budget, I'm able to connect the two dots, and that makes a lot more sense. So one last newbie question on this before I move on. Broadly speaking, the total amount of the preliminary estimated FHWA planning money to AMATS for the 2020 work plan, that 1.323 million, that's a fixed amount, and you worked backwards from that to allocate among the projects, or is that a floating amount, so if you added a project, that would grow?
We get a fixed amount.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have our fixed amount, and we have a certain amount that we allocate over to DOT for their time spent on this sort of thing, and then the rest goes to the AMAT staff.
Okay, thank
And
you.
AMAT staff in some cases includes the traffic safety folks, not just the AMAT
Right.
planners, so, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
If you don't, I left Pete since I had a
Well,
turn already.
if it's the same subject, you can.
Yeah, it's somewhat, it's, I'm just thinking as we're delving into this, life safety access would likely be, in many cases, just roads made to, what do we call it, emergency access road standards? And is that, when you look at your OSHIP and your complete streets and so on, or is that accounted for at all? Because it was a new concept to me, and I don't remember if there's something in the OSHIP that.
Can I add to that? It's not accounted for, and I think that's part of why this area-wide power was created. And to get to a place where it is accounted for in some kind of plan, that's the line of questioning I was asking, is if we need to create a special product or work item for that project.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's
To kind of get that going is go look at the OSHIP and our complete streets thing and see if, because, we're not going to build sidewalks on these things. And make sure that can fit. Have you kept up with what we did there with?
Yeah, just,
life safety?
again, you look at the ability to carve off enough time for a staff person to do this. When we built the budget and when we were working on the narrative, this wasn't a topic of discussion, so we didn't account for it. A little bit of time might be possible, but to update a previous work effort that might take a month or so, of total time, a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, that's a lot to jump in at the last minute, but as is, obviously, if that's what the policy committee wants, we will do that, and we'll figure out how to move the monies around and what task we'll take out of this year's or next year's list and figure out what to do. If that's whatever you want to do.
Can I follow up? What I was thinking, just a small piece, is that you have listed here official streets and highway plan and complete streets and street typology. Is that because you plan on doing some work on those?
Well, the street typology task has been in there for a couple of years now to create a street typology plan just to help clarify what those different roads mean, different classes as they relate to the land use around them. And so that's a task that we were supposed to work on last year, but the non-motorized plan, or last year, I'm saying last year meaning 2019, but the non-motorized plan and Spurnard Road plan took a lot longer than we had expected, and that's, Joni Wilm has been working on that, and she will be doing the street typology stuff. So the task is to complete that street typology
Well, it's good
plan.
that it was postponed, because now you can, when you do it, be thinking about these.
Exactly.
Because that's much smaller than going and identifying them. It's just
Right.
like, okay, let's make
Right.
sure that there exists
Yeah.
somewhere in there, somewhere we can refer to and say, this is this type of street we're talking about. Can I?
Can I add something to that? I'm sorry. We're going to turn this into a conversation. I think, John, one of the dangers with that, though, is that secondary access won't always be just a simple 20-foot wide road with nothing to it. There's rules about what the roads will have to look like. Mountain Air Drive being one of the example projects, won't look like that. I mean, it will be.
Yeah. I would make
an
sure
actual
they
road.
exist, though. We have a phrase for it in the OSHIP. I mean, otherwise, how do you refer to it? I mean, don't we have to have some official document that says, oh, this kind of street, this is what we mean?
Both all of the existing guidelines will speak to that, depending on where the road is and the type of road it's going to be.
Is there something in the OSHIP that talks about a road that's just built to emergency vehicle access standards?
No,
But I think there should be.
I don't.
Yeah, the official streets and highways plan is basically to say, is this a collector, is this an arterial,
Yeah.
et cetera. It doesn't talk about making
Mass
missing
standards.
connections. It just says, if you're gonna build something, here's the standard. It's X amount wide, it has pedestrian facilities, or it doesn't have pedestrian facilities. I mean, that's the extent of OS and HP. That's partly why we're doing the street typologies plan, because an arterial is not an arterial. So there's differences whether it's an industrial area or purely residential. So I don't know that it would work for the OS and HP. There's a little more connection to street typology, but not really, I think, as in-depth as you're looking for.
Mr. Pearson, do you remember what question you had?
Sorry.
Yeah, and so, but just following up on that, if I might, so do you think we need to create a new category just for a special connection to?
I'm just going to put this out here, Pete, no disrespect, but I think that's a separate sidebar discussion from the work plan issue. My question was, broadly speaking, we, I think, need as a community a updated analysis of what those most valuable or most needed emergency/secondary access points are in Chugach, Eagle River, all the way to Girdwood. And I was just curious if they could fit in here, but I have been talked out of it by Mr. Lyon, and we will revisit how to do that some other time.
Okay. All right, well, my question was about the UMAD traffic transportation demand management study. So it looks like their request for the proposal is going out next year, and they're expecting the contract to do the study will come out in 2021. At least that's what it's saying on page 22 that I'm looking at. Is that the current plan?
That's, I mean, we have been working on getting prepared to write the RFP, so we're not quite there yet, but that's what we're working on now. The past experience at getting things through purchasing and the assembly, et cetera, all those different steps that's kind of the time frame of it.
Okay.
It could go quicker. Hope
Well,
springs
I'm just
eternal,
wondering because
as
the
my brother
UMAD
said.
Community Council is going to see this and they're going to say that you're dragging your feet and you're never going to do the study. I can hear it already. So I was just trying to get as much detail as possible, so I'll be prepared for those questions when they come.
And Pete, if I may, I mean, my short experience here is exactly what Mr. Lyon described. and you probably share this at DOT, the procurement process is unreasonably long and slow. And we're going to do the best we can. It would be my hope that we figure out the magic secret sauce to get things through faster, but it does not exist yet.
Part of the challenge is that, so with the work program, just with all of our federal funds, we have to report on it quarterly. And so if we get to the end of the year and we have it in there that says, this was going to be done this year, then we report on it and they say, well, it's supposed to be done, it's not done yet, and then we have to change the program next year to add that in. We're just trying to give ourselves the opinion that unfortunately has been needed in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Okay. Any comments from the public on this subject? Okay. Hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve as presented the 2020 through 2021 Unified Planning Work Program.
We're asking for the release for.
Sorry, release. Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 5B, this is the follow-up 2020-2021 Unified Work Program UPWP budget. Craig, you want to
Right, so
elucidate?
again, this is just the budget. We looked at the narrative and it kind of fed into, again, asking staff, how much time do you think it will take you to be working on the TDM study in 2020? And times our chargeable rate comes up with that number. And we have room to move during the year if we need to add more funds. It's just an amendment for you folks with our standard procedures in the public participation plan. But this is our best guesstimate on what staff will be doing, how much time that it might take, and the funds going to that. We have a few minor contracts in there, mostly our project modeling support through our contractor. And then with the rest of the budget that is there in that spreadsheet, it includes the capturing the match that we get from transit. It has transit funds and transit projects in there and their funding. So in this case, we're asking for you to approve the budget. This came before the TAC 2 weeks ago, and they recommended approval of the budget.
Comments or questions from the committee?
Two questions. One, high level first. So upon approval of this budget, provided we do you update the UPMP, UPWP to reflect the dollar amounts when it goes out to the public? Okay, thank you. And then second question, will you, channeling my inner Fred Dyson here, who hates acronyms, and in this one case, I do agree with him, in future years, could you have a key to the various acronyms? That's part one. Part two is for the good of all of us right now, could you go across the column headings from left to right, beginning with the yellow preliminary estimated FHWA, PL, planning dollars to AMATS, and just give us the, so Chris can understand explanation of what each of those columns means?
Okay, so just for clarification, we would like a key on the budget itself.
Yes, so
Okay.
so that the acronyms that are used on the budget headings, which there are many of them.
Yeah, sure.
just it's on there somewhere.
Yeah, in the UPWP, the narrative, there's a glossary in the back. So I just wanted to make sure I knew where you wanted it.
Okay.
Okay, so on the budget itself, and I'll see how many of these I can get right. The first category talks about the planning funds, preliminary estimated FHWA PL. So PL is the planning funds. Again, that's not typically, that's not a capital fund, that's a planning fund, that's more time, okay. So FHWA PL to AMATS in-house, that's how much money is going to myself and my staff. The next line is if we have any contracts, PL to AMATS contractual services. The following line is PL funds to DOT, so that's to fund the AMATS planner at DOT.
And what does that asterisk mean? Next to ADOT.
Well, that's a great question. It's not a question that I have an answer to right
Okay,
now.
fair enough.
I better figure that one out. It might be a residual number, but I'm not sure what that means. And so then the following column that says FHWA PL funds total, that's the combination, that's our allocation, and it's broken down by some to DOT, some to the MOA, some to contractual services. That's the total amount.
Generally, they ask for us to, is it incorporating comments listed at the bottom of the page, which in this case speaks to the indirect cost for the overhead rates the muni is charging. Could it be you're carving off that 20% that goes back to DOT? Or
It's a very, I don't know, and I'm gonna find out. I'll have to look back at some old budgets to find out what that was. So the next column says FHWA SPR funds to DOT planning.
What's SPR fund?
Huh?
What are SPR?
Yeah, so SPR funds are statewide planning and research funds. And so it currently looks like there aren't any going to DOT planning. If we get apprised of something different, we'll add them in. FHWA STP funds. I'm gonna get this one wrong. Is that what grew out of the STPG? I forget now. I think, so that's the surface transportation block grants. So this is basically the main AMATS allocation. So these are the funds that show in the tip for these projects. So this is where you would see, in this case, 800,000 for an update to the MTP, the 350,000 for signal timing that we do. There's the money for the TDM study and the TISMO plan. These are the numbers directly out of the tip. So as you know, we have X amount in there, and then there's the ICAP for the overhead to the state. There's some overhead to the municipality as they manage the financial side of this. There's match included. There's all sorts of things that come out of that. The 500,000 is just what's in the tip. The dollar figure that we might put on the street for an RFP would be lower.
Okay.
That's the money, that's the dollar figure shown in the tip. That's why it doesn't reflect maybe what you were remembering from when we talked about it before. FHWA, the next column is the CMAQ money to MOA transit. So again, CMAQ, congestion mitigation, air quality funds. Those are the funds that actually go over to transit. Way down at the bottom, you see the 851. That is the rideshare transit marketing. Those are actual CMAQ dollars. We put some of our own STPBG funds into the CMAQ table, but these are the actual CMAQ funds. They have different rules and regulations there, different numbers.
These are the funds that are supporting the committed measures in our carbon monoxide and particulate non-attainment area funds, non-attainment areas. So they can't be spent anyplace else but maintenance or non-attainment areas. This is our portion.
The next category is the 5303 funds to MOA transit. And I cannot remember which one the 5303 funds, these are numbers that are just given to us by transit. They have to be reflected in our program as the rate planning. I believe, I don't even want to take a guess, I'd be wrong. I know 5307 has to do with
I'm good, I understand that part.
commute, transit, you're a little more aware of that. So I don't remember what the 5303 exactly is, but there are transit control funds that just have to be shown here. Similar to the HSIP funds that we show in the tip, the AMATS doesn't control the allocation of, but they just have to be reflected. So 5307, same kind of thing. And I believe those are blank right now because I'm not sure that the split letter has been signed between the railroad and the municipality. If it has, they have not given us those numbers yet. So possible that it's been signed, I just don't have those numbers yet. Next category is EPA DEC grants to the Municipal Department of Health. And they have not given us an updated number. I'm not sure that they got any last year. I know they got some the year before. So if it occurs, we can add those into there. Then there's your total federal revenue funds from all sources there. The next category is the in-kind match. And that is, again, those are local, I believe those are all local property taxpayer funds that are used by the municipal traffic department when they do the traffic counts, they put the hoses on the road, et cetera, to do the counts. That's our in-kind match for our entire program for the municipal's funding. It wouldn't reflect, obviously, any match funds that the transit has to come up with or DOT has to come up with. So that's the MOA in-kind match. There's the transit local match that they use to pay for their transit funds that they get. You have PL cash match again for DOT. Small number down at the bottom. DOT SPR cash match and STP cash match, those are again, the planning research funds and the statewide fund, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And
That's very
then
helpful.
we will add those acronyms, those lovely acronyms at the bottom, so it makes more sense.
That's great. No, thank you.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I mean, we're an acronym-heavy world, as you know, and in this particular, in the federal transportation planning area, and sometimes it's hard to step back and go, oh, that's right. Not everyone knows what CMAC means, or SPR, or whatever. So, good suggestion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One quick question, your indirect overhead rate's 20.3%. That's actually down from last year, is that correct?
I believe it was closer to 22 last year. I think you're right. I'd
Okay.
have to go double check that.
So the net effect on the bottom number, the bottom line number, that 5.788 million, is that number inclusive of that indirect, or is that has that indirect already been carved out?
Well, I'm not sure about that because that 20.3 is for the municipal planning department. So the public transit department has a different number and I don't know what it is. And so I don't think that includes that because that's just reflecting the numbers in the first two columns.
Are you sure?
I-
The way I read, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
The way I read the footnote, it says incorporates the planning indirect cost allocation for 2020, and then it says that in bold, sort of maroon, which corresponds to the cumulative total above it, which is also in bold and maroon. Is that correct?
Well, again, I just don't, I'm not sure whether the public transit department has a different rate, because that's not included in our first two columns of staff time. So I don't,
Well, but transit's not reflected in your column. I
no,
think-
but he was talking about the 5.4.
Oh, I'm sorry, on the far right.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure if that overhead rate's if 20% comes off that 5.7 million and you're left over with that, or if the 20%'s already been carved off and the 5.7 is what you're left with for total program execution.
That latter one.
I think it's
Yeah.
the last thing.
I think
Well,
so,
I
but
mean,
not
and
positive.
I'm not an expert on this, but the way, I mean, if I can trust the words, the way I read this at least, the AMATS portion has already had its overhead applied. I can't speak to
Oh, right.
transit.
That's true.
Okay. All right. So in effect, you should have, because of the lower overhead rates, you should have had more available funds to do what you need.
Right, and, you know, I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding in terms of the overhead rate is, you know, they, here's your overhead rate, and then they put the money aside, and we charge to it. So in other words, if I take 2 weeks of vacation, it comes out of that overhead rate. If I'm sick for a week, it comes out of that overhead rate. If we can purchase certain things, and they come out of the overhead rate. It's used for that purpose, but it's also used when grant accounting downtown, when they are working on our grant and doing our reports for us, they're charging to that overhead rate. So it's all going to AMATS-related processes. So we may charge some of it, and different departments may charge some of it too when they're doing work for us. So I know in the first two columns, it is reflected and it's already taken off. I'm just not positive about the column that says total federal revenue funds.
If you want to confuse an engineer, put a dollar sign in front of that number. It's perfect.
None of the other engineers laugh.
Engineers don't laugh.
Who knows? Planner dude.
There, guys.
All right, any other comments from the committee on this subject? Hearing none, any comments from the public on this subject? James?
James Starzyk, DOT. On task 410, that's traffic counts, is that correct?
Yes.
This year, usually the TIP-funded traffic counts program has an allocation to support Central Region traffic counts program. This year, due to some budgeting at headquarters, their 2020 funding is coming from a different source, and the TIP funding is not going to be necessary. Having talked to your project manager, she said she'd be able to absorb what is generally the Central Region allocation into her own budget, but I don't think that's reflected here.
Yeah, because this is just the total dollar figure. the 465 there.
No. The 465 isn't inclusive of the 150, I believe, that generally goes to the central region traffic counts.
Well, I don't have the tip in front of me to see what the total figure is, so I'm not sure what that is, but.
I think this year was 620 for traffic counts.
I guess all I can say is I don't have anything official that says they won't be able to absorb it, or they won't be able to, the central region won't be able to use it all, so.
Well, I've had this email conversation.
Yeah, but I didn't get an official, yes, definitely it's happening, and here's the dollar figure that we don't need, and so on and so forth. So we can add that in fairly easily.
Okay.
That won't affect anyone's ability to utilize those funds.
Well, if it doesn't need to be in here now, then it's a conversation we could have later.
Any other comments from the public on this subject? Sir,
I got a question before I say anything.
your name first, please.
Eugene Carl Haberman. I'm confused. What area of the agenda are you on right now?
5B,
5C.
or 5C, sorry.
5C?
5B, 5B, budget.
B.
5B. Is that this thing, or did you just pass it?
That's A, 5A.
That's the one you just passed before.
That is the one they released for 30-day public review.
Correct,
But that's the one that you, just before you had discussion on,
correct.
okay? And then you took action on it. And so you're on this? Is that
Yes,
what you're on?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I want to speak. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the valley, follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, decision made by the governing body is more likely in public interest. First, and for any actions you take today, I object. Why? Simple notification. I was at a meeting, came to the end of it, missed it, and spoke to your representative of your body here and explained that where was the notice on the community website for this meeting, where normal notices like Anchor Community Development Authority meetings, board meetings, and all that. It's now a pattern, consistent pattern, even when I spent 15, 20 minutes with your representative here, tell them to show them exactly where to put it, it wasn't there.
I'm sorry, are you commenting on 5B?
It affects all of them,
Okay, no,
okay?
no,
But if you,
I'm asking you, are you commenting on the item that we're talking about right now? We'll have a moment at the end of the meeting.
you can't take
to talk about
action
the
if your notices are not right. It's not there. It's on the mute, where you have the assembly agenda, stuff like that, in that section, you put the AMATS there. But you create a sidebar scenario for this tragedy, and most important, you notice I had to ask you questions. Where are you? What item are you talking about? You know, even Schulte said, a letter that was wrong that you corrected. How much confusion can you have? And then the critical thing is you expect public to be here, not in this level, and the public, who's here from the public? Everyone from state or federal, whatever? And I'd like to remind you one last thing. I was in the beginning of the AMATS meetings back when, the beginning of Anchorage, and this is appalling. That's all I have to say. And any action you take on this one or anyone is not valid. And I will take it to the Anchorage Assembly meeting and other meetings of what you have done.
Thank you for your comments.
Can I just,
Go ahead.
I don't want to belabor us. Are you looking at the upcoming municipal meetings website? Because this is posted to that, much like any board,
No,
commission, or assembly meeting.
With the proper location, the
I'm just
location.
asking a question, yes or no?
You're referring to that area, and that's not where the main
It
notices
says
are.
municipal meetings. Did you look here?
Excuse me. I monitor, as well-intended other assembly members, regularly, several times a day, and what you changes and quickly you do. The pattern is you put your stuff over in a place where it's not the central place for putting public notices. You put it in a place where the assembly has their agenda and stuff like that. And so you put below it or above it, AMATS, and you have agenda there. That's a sidebar, that's not the main location.
Thank you.
The main location is where ACDA, AMATS, assembly committee meetings, you name it, Community Development Authority, you name it. That's where those are. Port Commission, you see that stuff there. And what has happened with AMATS, and the detail of the agenda is out there. But it's in such a sidebar that who is here? Look at the audience here. Anyone here from the public, a community
Thank you,
council?
I just had a simple question, thank you.
Well, it has relevance, the fact that they're not connected with
Thank
you.
you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments from the public on the issue? Okay, so what is the will of the committee?
Move to, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, move to approve. You're moving.
As I say, move to approve the 2020 budget, please.
And I'll second it. I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, so if there is some dollar amount, like $150,000 that's not in here, we approve it, but you may have to add it, or what do we?
Well, this is just for public release.
No, this one is for approval.
Yeah, just for approval.
We can amend it if we find that we have officially been told of a certain number that we need to add. That's not a problem.
Does that work, Jim? That was a question for you.
I'm sorry?
That 150,000 you mentioned, so we're approving a budget, but you're saying the 150,000 belongs in here that's not here. So we could just amend that later and that's fine.
I don't make that decision.
That's a question.
Are you asking if an item, if an amount is incorrect, is there a way to update or reapprove the budget? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because I think Jim said that there was 150,000 that probably should be in here that's not. So if we're approving the budget, we know what's wrong. It's gonna-
So keeping in mind that we have the PL allocation, which we know that is a solid number. And then we have other columns out there. This particular one is a column that is controlled by the state of Alaska. It's their TIP funds that go to help them to supplement their traffic counts. And, if we need to reflect a larger dollar figure in there, that is fairly easy to do with an amendment to the UPWP budget. It's laid out exactly how we would do that in our public involvement plan, which we're following, so not a problem.
Okay, and we're mostly focusing then on the PL columns here. Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5C, Eagle River Second 10-Year PM10 Limited Maintenance Plan. Craig, will you be presenting, or should I just turn it over to Cindy now?
I'll just do a quick update, and then the smart person in the room can give you the details.
Okay.
So this is indeed the second 10-year PM10 limited maintenance plan. This relates to the Eagle River area. This is a document that will end up at the assembly for approval, but it comes through AMATS since we're involved in this sort of thing. It went out for a public review. You folks released it for a public review previously. It went out for that public review, and it then came back through the Technical Advisory Committee 2 weeks ago, and they recommend that you support and recommend adoption to the Assembly for incorporation to the State Air Quality Control Plan, the SIP. And so it's a little strange because most of the time we send things to the Assembly and we ask for your recommendation there, and then it comes to the Policy Committee for final approval. This is different. This is a case where they're asking you to recommend to the Assembly yourselves later as you meet as a full body to make the final approval on this. What did I miss?
Well, it should be on a consent agenda. I've asked your Anchorage Health Association to get it on in December, is what we're hoping. And we're hoping to put it out for the state public comment period in January. So we'll be releasing this and the Juneau Limited Maintenance Plan to then, once we do our public process, we'll formally submit to EPA. EPA has 18 months or so to approve it. At that point in time, only after they approve it does the 10 years actually start. So if you look at this memo, we originally got it done in 2010. EPA didn't approve it till 2013, so those 3 years didn't count. So we've actually started a little earlier in the game plan here. This plan isn't actually due until early 2021. So we're putting it here through now is our request so that we can make sure that we try to keep the end of the second and the start of the, end of the first, start of the second, quite as close as we can try to be as efficient as possible. The other thing about this is that we convened at the very beginning a meeting with, we invited FTA and FHWA, we met with AMATS, we met with Department of Health and DEC to, decide who was gonna do the work, who was gonna write it, what the process would be. It was determined the DEC was the best to write this plan, so we wrote it. We then gave it to the municipality air quality staff to review it. They reviewed it, gave us comments, we incorporated those comments, and we submitted it to EPA. They reviewed it, we incorporated their comments, had another big talk, and then we went through the process with AMATS. So we're going through the due diligence here, and hopefully will make you guys comfortable enough to approve it through your consent agenda so that we can follow up and get it incorporated. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions or comments from the committee on this subject? Hearing none. Any comments or questions from the public on this subject? Okay. What is the will of the committee?
Move to adopt the Eagle River second 10-year PM10 limited maintenance plan by the Anchorage Assembly for incorporation into the state air quality plan,
Second.
air quality control plan.
Is that what we're doing, or are you recommending it go to the assembly?
No, it has to go to the assembly.
It
So
says in here on adoption.
you're recommending.
Recommending adoption.
You're
Yeah, we
recommending
recommend
adoption
adoption.
by the assembly.
Does this 21 pages go to the assembly?
All that and the appendix, yes.
Oh, it's been moved and seconded. Any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay. One last action item, agenda item 5D, Citizens Advisory Committee Resolution 002-2019, Glen Highway on-ramp merge upgrades. Craig, you want to read it?
Sure. So this may be not necessary, but I just want to keep you in the loop. The AMATS Citizens Advisory Committee met, and they were looking at some of the stuff that came out of the Glen Highway Integrated Corridor Management Study, which was an AMATS-funded study. And one of the big items in there one of the priority items in there was this idea of the highway on-ramp merge upgrade. So my layman's terms, it's kind of lengthening lengthening the amount of time that people have to merge onto the highway so they can get up to speed faster, and that will help move traffic along a little better. So that's, again, my layman's terms, so it may not be exactly what it does. But, so they passed this resolution and asked it to go up to the Technical Advisory Committee and on up to you to say, we would like to have this project looked at, scored, ranked, et cetera, and considered for the next amendment that would be for the 19 to 22 tip. Now, the TAC looked at it and said, well, we're going to send this up to the policy committee. What they were told at that meeting is there may indeed already be a state DOT funded project to implement some, if not most of these merge ramp upgrades, highway on-ramp merge upgrades. So I don't know if someone from DOT has some other information about that, but that's kind of what we were told, that we may not need to do this project because it may be already underway. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee on this?
Can we get clarification on whether that's included or not?
Mr. Van Hove, you've got some information on this, correct?
Van Hove, DOT. Yeah, this is in response to the Integrated Corridor Management Plan. We got a request from legislator to provide a priority list of projects based on the list of projects that was in that plan, and whether or not we're going to, what's our timeline to start on these. And so we provided that back to the state legislator. And this was one of the projects that we said was a high priority for the municipality as well as DOT, with the caveat that all of the projects identified in that plan have $0, zero budget applied to them. And then we did incorporate in talking to project design, we do have a 3R, a rehabilitation project for the Glen Highway that we're starting design soon, and that could and probably will incorporate the majority of these ramps.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Well, just a follow-up, I guess, then, I don't know if it's to Todd or to Craig, is there any harm in us, I guess, approving or accepting the resolution, whatever we're supposed to do?
Well, what the resolution is asking you to do is direct staff to the next major amendment we have to the TIF to score and rank it and consider it to be added. And of course, as you know, if you add something, you have to take something out. So there's no real harm, I guess, in saying rank it, score it, and see if you want to do it. We don't necessarily have a major amendment coming up. So depending on the status of the O'Malley project, that would be the kind of the main reason for doing a major amendment, but we may not, we don't often do major amendments just because of, honestly, just because of the long time frame it takes to do them.
Yeah.
And also, you know, kind of related to the way we've been amending the TIP previously, related to the federal certification that came out. So,
Can I ask a follow-up of Mr. Van Hove or you, I guess, either one? Is there any challenge to this, to the work that you're already doing in the, on the highway if this gets recommended for consideration for TIP funding?
Any challenge as far as what?
I don't know, creating duplicative or overlapping work, taking money from projects that need it, and putting it somewhere where it's already sort of being accommodated?
Well, I think worth noting, when we looked at this at the TAC, we said we don't disagree with the amendment. We think it's fine because we are in fact already doing it.
Okay.
A lot of these things, we just make a motion to acknowledge receipt. I mean, we do the assembly, we get a report, we acknowledge we got it. I mean, to say we approve it,
Yeah, that's a
we're
good
not
point.
exactly approving something. So I'd say it's a bit of motion made.
Not yet, would you like?
I'd move to acknowledge that we've reviewed and that we've reviewed it.
Review and accept, or? If I were on the CAC, I'd like to know that you did more than review it.
Yeah, they're looking for an amendment to the TIP, is what they're asking.
Well, I'd wait till we amend the TIP though, and beyond to.
Well, I guess the question is are we, are we directing staff to score, rank, and consider it? That's what this is asking us to do.
Score, rank, and consider it.
But if it's already being done, then we're sort of approving, reviewing something and approving something that's already in the process.
It's maybe in the process in a project that could have it. There's a lot of wishy words right there.
Woulda, coulda, what you're saying?
Woulda, coulda. If you make its own project and you score and rank it to see how it fits versus you go in and you make an amendment and you say, this project, we're gonna add it to the scope to ensure that it's in there. So there's there's soft and there's harder on how you might wanna approach this.
Okay. Can I offer a comment that's going to turn into a question for staff? If you read the resolution line itself, the result line, they're asking that the freeway on-ramp upgrades project from the ICM be scored, ranked, and considered, which to me is a direction to staff, for the next major amendment, and it doesn't give a time certain. So to me, it seems like if and when there's an effort to make a major amendment, then they are asking that this be scored and ranked. That's my statement. The question then to staff is, I guess, is one outcome of this, when it's scored and ranked, it'll get a low score and rank because it's already being accommodated in another project? Is that an outcome that could happen?
Haven't looked at the criteria in a while, but I don't think there's anything kind of related to that,
Okay.
if it's already underway. So, I mean, you know, wherever it ranks, the policy committee could
Move it.
move it up higher or lower if you want to move something down. So, if you think it's a bigger priority than something that's above it, even if it ranked lower, you could move it where you want. That's your prerogative. It's the way this program was set up.
I think if I'm not mistaken, we can also look at what the department's doing with regard to incorporating the on-ramp changes in their projects as shown today, and then evaluate what's not being included in their projects with regard to these on-ramps. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Van Hove? And you're already working on a project, you're saying, right? You already got one in there.
We're going to begin work on
Yeah,
it.
it's early days. We're
Okay.
in the gray area.
Oh, Well, then okay, thank you, that helps. Seems like there's,
I guess we could approve it. It's not
yeah, it
actually
seems like there's not a lot of harm in it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we're making any commitments today by approving this.
Okay,
you.
Ron moved that we reviewed and approve it.
I'll second that.
All right. Actually got-
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, yeah.
We might be a little premature on that, so.
Sorry about that.
Any other comments from the committee on this? No. Right, so any comments or questions from the public on this, on the Citizens Advisory Committee resolution? Okay, hearing none. Will of the committee?
Move that we approve the CAC resolution.
Second.
Any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay. Kirby, any other action items that we're missing?
No, sir, none that I know of.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 6A. This is a project update for MTP, the 2040 MTP update. Craig, are you going to talk? Or
Okay.
Mr. Young and Ellen?
Aaron Yoganila with AMATS. Just give you guys a quick update. So at the last meeting, I believe, we talked about the urgency to get moving quickly on the MTP update as we are now in our 1-year grace period and the feds have given us a slap on the wrist for that. So we just wanted to give you guys a quick schedule for the committee members as to what's coming up.
Where's a copy for the public?
This isn't an action item.
Public has a right to have a copy of what was passed out.
I can hand out my copy to the members of the public who need it or get them to it later.
I'll share mine with Pete.
Yeah, you can have mine, I don't care.
So what this is a schedule for November. We're at the end of November, but more or less close enough. November, December of 2019 for the MTP. So our hope is, if we can get everything done, is post on November 26th, the public review draft of the 2040 MTP for the TAC meeting that's happening in December. As you know, we kind of switched the TAC meeting, or we talked about switching the TAC meeting from the 5th of December to the 12th of December. So what we're trying to do is give everyone, when we post this, more time to review the document before we ask for approval to release it for its public process. Because giving a week for the committee members to review isn't really realistic. And it was mentioned at the last policy committee meeting, if you give it to the assembly members, it's giving it to the public. So we decided to incorporate that into our process. So what we're going to do is we're going to post it on the 26th of November for the TAC agenda. And at the same time, we're going to send out notice that it's available for people to look at. So what I'm planning on doing is sending out notice to the committee members and sending out the notice for the TAC meeting at the same time that talks about that it's available. So members of the public also have time to look at it in preparation for the TAC meeting on the 12th. In addition, what we are actually going to do is have a TAC work session, our TAC Policy Committee work session on the 5th of December. We'll send out notice for that as well. So we can get the committees together to have discussion on what they've seen so far of the document. This is your guys' opportunity to come and just ask questions and look at it, or what's going on with this. It's not an actual official meeting or anything, so we're not going to take minutes. We're not going to vote on anything like that. The hope is we'll have everything ready for the TAC meeting on the 12th for the TAC to recommend release with any changes to the policy committee. And then the policy committee will look at it a week later to release it for its public comment period with any changes. So you'll note on here, we have a strict deadline we must adhere to by December 23rd. We have to get the document ready to get it into the Planning and Zoning Commission. As you know, the Planning and Zoning Commission can take 5 to 6 months or more to get through its process. And as we have a year to get this approved, we're struggling to make sure we get this done on time. So if we miss the December 23rd deadline, we're in a lot of trouble. So it's just to give you guys an honest heads up opinion about it. So we need to make sure everything falls in line. So when we come and bring it to you guys for your meetings, we really need it released that day. So that's why I encourage you to take a look at the document when it's posted on the 26th and get busy on your comments and questions and edits so you're ready for the policy committee meeting, if you would be so kind. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee?
Just one, great work on putting together a overlapping and concurrent, and I think excellent idea on how to compress our timeline. It looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Swag vests.
I finally got
When
mine.
do we get
When do we get those?
You have one, right there.
I paid for this.
All right.
Should work for us.
Any comments from the public on the updated schedule for the MTP review? Yes, sir.
Oh, no, not just,
It's free. Oh, go ahead, please go ahead.
no, I'm just scratching my head.
Okay.
You can call him, and I'd like to thank Senator Wellington for providing me a copy. Much appreciative. But you make a decision, your hearing report, how the heck is the public have seen this particular document? It just was passed out. You're dealing with time schedule and time frame and connecting with the public. They had no chance unless they got a copy, and it was difficult for me to get this single copy. It wasn't for Senator Wellington to give me a copy of this at this very meeting, just before the words were said, explaining what this document is. So, is this fair? Is this reasonable? As far as I'm concerned, it's far from reasonable. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Linnell, do you have I think we're on to the update for O'Malley now. Mr. Linnell, do you have an update on the O'Malley project for us, phase 2?
Sure, through the chair. John Linnell, DOT pre-construction engineer. On O'Malley, the project is moving ahead with the right-of-way. They're moving ahead with the right-of-way. They will be approaching the public either in December or January on acquisitions. Anticipate obligating in fiscal year 20.
State fiscal year or federal fiscal year?
Federal fiscal year.
Oh, so they will obligate the project, meaning they will go to bid in 2020. That doesn't mean anything regarding substantive construction activity.
That doesn't mean we'll go to bid. What that means is we will request the funding from FHWA for the project within the federal fiscal year.
Right. All right, go ahead.
So to ask a follow-up that I think you were just trying to clarify, play out the rest of the timeline then, how long till?
Construction doesn't start until 2021.
2021, okay.
Mr. Welton?
So it's like, I think some people expected it this year, it didn't happen. So it's sort of 2 years late, is it? I don't think, is that all right?
My understanding, as long as I've been involved as a pre-construction engineer, which only been since May, is that it was for delivery in federal fiscal year 20.
Okay, so it's now 2 years late then? Or it potentially would be?
No.
21, so one
No.
year.
And he's delivering it next year.
Oh, that kind of delivery. I thought you meant finished.
No.
Because that'd be great.
Delivery in terms of getting the federal funds for it.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to make sure, because I will be asked by my constituents, when are they gonna, or I am being asked, when are they doing O'Malley Road? So they want to know when the stuff's dug up and there's bulldozers out there, and that's,
21, summer of
Okay.
21.
yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Part of what happened, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, if you look at when the bulk of the development happened in Anchorage Bowl, it is coming up on that 50-year mark now. So I think we ended up nicking a neighborhood that was within a potential eligibility for the historic register. So we had to start a whole 106 report process on 40 houses
Something like that.
that potentially were coming up within the sort of 5-year window on
Yeah,
the
once you get within a certain
50-year
window of the
historic
50-year,
register for
Really?
eligibility.
yes.
And you need to, that's important to know because as we develop projects within the Anchorage Bowl, because Anchorage has grown older over the years, this will happen more and more often. And the 106 clearances, the section 106 or State Historical Preservation Office clearances are a long lead time in our project development. And that will become more and more problematic as we move along in time in the Anchorage area. Even though there is no way in hell my 1971 house is anything historic. Burn to the ground tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. We still have to do the studies. And Judith Bittner and her crew are very dogged in that regard.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, we actually found out about that when they were doing that project along the road up to Stuckingham Heights. And they found some World War II mementos over there where they said, well, they must have been having maneuvers here or something. So they ended up digging that all up to see if there was anything worth saving or whatever.
And it has only gotten more owners over the years. It went from the historic thing to a historic viewscape to a historic district, and now they're considering historic
Soundscape.
soundscapes.
What does that mean?
That means if the traffic noise changes because we redirected the road or are adding or subtracting traffic, there was a historic noise level, and you are touching that historic noise contours, and that will need to be taken into consideration when studying impacts regarding historic and cultural resources.
Okay.
So this only gets better.
So every road's gonna have big, tall sound fences next to it.
It just means we will spend more money and time studying things before we can move forward. And it will be more of your road money not going into roads.
And every road will be built to emergency access vehicles.
Going back to
That's
horse
all the
and
money
buggy.
that'll be left.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Not that I'm a vet.
We could always go back to stagecoaches.
I know. Dog mushing.
Okay. All right. Were there any questions or other comments on the O'Malley update? Were there any questions or comments from the public on the O'Malley update? Okay. Then we are done with item 6. We will move on to item 7, general information. Any AMATS staff or committee have general information to present? Anything of interest at all? Any shenanigans at the assembly level that might want to be talked about?
I'll start that. I think many of you heard us talking about this earlier, but a little bit of clarity into what we were talking about when we were talking about secondary emergency access. Right now in Anchorage, the municipality of Anchorage, we as a city have limited capacity when it comes to financing and constructing and maintaining roads that are outside of our legacy road service area. And what we have begun to experience both as a remnant of November 30 earthquake, but also during previous wildfire experiences, is that there are limited emergency or secondary egress routes for a lot of the neighborhoods that are being built in areas outside of ARTSA, which typically means homes that are built or neighborhoods that are built on the hillside, Chugach, Eagle River area, or Girdwood. Girdwood's probably the most egregious example of this. If the bridge on Glacier ever washed out, you have the majority of that population that would be stranded with no way to get to Seward Highway. And so when looking at that and looking at the limitations of service areas, what we developed was a new area-wide power, meaning a power of the municipality that it can exert anywhere within the municipality for emergency access, road, finance, construct, and maintain. We keep calling it the Emergency Access Ordinance or the Secondary Access Ordinance. This passed on Tuesday night. And so what this does is this now gives us an opportunity as a city to move forward on some of those emergency and secondary access points. One of those you've heard us talk about in the past because John and I were interested in getting it in the or including it in the TIP, and this is Mountaineer Drive. Mountaineer Drive is a road idea that would provide the first secondary access into a lot of the neighborhoods and subdivisions you've seen develop on the Upper Bear Valley area over the past 20 years. And so with the passage of this area-wide power with inclusion in the TIP, we have queued up an opportunity for the municipality to treat and pursue these secondary roads in all of those areas, much like we do currently for roads within ARTSA that we include in the TIP, meaning we'll be able to bond for portions of those roads, like matching funds, et cetera, for projects in the TIP. So that's pretty exciting. That's one of the shenanigans that we were up to on Tuesday night, and I think you're going to see and hear a lot more about in the coming years.
Well summarized, thank you.
Sure. Any other comments from the committee? Okay. I have a quick question. Maybe this is to Mr. Welton. My understanding is that Mr. Dunbar and the Assembly has decided not to move forward, at least as a city project, with the Academy member. Is that a true statement?
No.
Leaning that way in some regards.
How did you characterize it?
You know, I think what has happened is there was an ongoing thought it was about an $8 million project, and now we discovered suddenly it was 20 to 25 million with the right of way and so on. So it's like, whoa. So I kind of moved on from it. But that's so much of our normal bonding.
Sure.
It's like, we've got these other projects that are, in our ranking, are much higher than that, broadly speaking. But if the state project goes through, we're in a heap of trouble without doing something. Because we're not Patriot Park is. That'll be cut through traffic like mad.
Okay.
So, but it was that thinking, this was just too much of our normal bonding capacity to put towards this project, so it was cut back. Does that mean next year or the following year, it wouldn't be on there?
Yeah, so what's the thought moving
So
forward?
I'll just, can I supplement that? What the Assembly amendment to the CIB did, so our CIB is our immediate funding plan, usually results in the bond for the next year, and our CIP plan is the longer-term plan. It remains in the CIP, it remains in our 5-year plan. It's just that the current tranche of funding was changed, and the right-of-way acquisitions dollars that we had planned to add to our existing pool of money for this project was essentially eliminated, with the exception of adding 1.5 to the kitty with the express intent of completing one acquisition of particular property in the right-of-way acquisition. So in that sense, John's right, the future's somewhat uncertain, but the project is not gone.
Okay. So do you want to federalize it with AMATS allocations in future years, or what's your thinking? I won't hold you to this, I'm just trying to get an idea where you think you might be going.
I don't think we know, but I'll tell you some vague, I mean, the whole span of things. I mean, it's been talked about, okay, go ahead and build it, but put a barrier on Academy. Okay, no one likes that. Build it, but until we get the big project done, it's just for bike ped. Okay, it's another alternative. Another is, we designed it and we just figured we'll get the money as we need it. But maybe we relook at the project and say, okay, what can we do for 8 million or whatever it would be? And it might just be the traffic signal at Vanguard and Abbott, some kind of treatment at the stop sign. That's for you guys to figure out, but, or engineers, for engineers to figure out. But a lower scale. I mean, now it's, you come off Academy, you have this huge wide road, and it sweeps you off to Abbott. And maybe we can't afford to do that. It's basically what we.
So the cost estimates were just order of magnitudes off, is that what?
By 3 times.
But it was specific to the right-of-way piece of it?
I think primarily right away, again, a couple
And
buildings.
are you operating under the Uniform Relocation Act when you're acquiring properties for this?
Well, let me rephrase that. Our belief is, yes, it is an open question that's being reviewed by legal now because of the way the amendment changed and specifically singled out this one parcel as being the recipient. So it is unclear. We're going to get direction from legal on that.
Well, and there was also, when we did our work session, talk about whether the projected traffic numbers were close to correct or in the ballpark, because we thought there might be new exits that might be done on O'Malley Drive when that project is done, and that the traffic numbers might change. So, and nobody can really tell us what that looks like 100% right yet, because that's still, a little too far in the future.
Well, I reached out to Mr. Dunbar a few days ago. He declined my offer to sit down and try to see where you guys were heading. That offer's still open, and it's certainly still open to any of you. If you have questions about traffic numbers, we are the ones that developed those traffic projections in the first place. The concern at the headquarters and at the governor's level is when we agree at one point in time to move forward in a particular manner on a larger project that will certainly transcend multiple administrations and election cycles. We want to make sure that we're not expending funds that will maybe not be able to be executed 2 cycles down the road because other people are in office or in the assembly. So we're just trying to figure out a way that we can have confidence moving forward once we set a footprint for projects that these things can keep going. So that's a concern.
Well, it's not unreasonable. I think from my view, I mean, I'd certainly sit down with you, but I would look at, CRW is still designing the whole thing, and say, what can we afford to do? And just say what other, because they may have had, not even looked at some things, because they thought we had the budget to do whatever needed. I mean, the deluxe version.
Well, I would absolutely encourage you to work with DOT in concert on this and not do it in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things that we have flexibility-wise that might be able to help on. But if you don't come talk to us, we can't have that discussion.
Yeah, is that Sean Baskey? I mean, just deal
Well,
with him? or-
Vasquez a project manager, and you gotta understand, the lens of a project manager is very myopic. They are the jet fighters that get in the planes to kill the other guy, right?
That's well described. Can I-
Wow. They are,
Sean Baskey.
it's a retired colonel talking. But the bigger picture is often different. At a John Linnell, at a pre-construction engineering level, he's got a different aperture
Yeah.
that can talk about HSIP funds that might be able to be leveraged for a signal to happen, or right-of-way footprints for NEPA documents and such like that. So the point is, if you're not talking to us, if we can't have conversations with you or Dunbar or whoever about these concerns, and you start jumping to conclusions at an assembly level, it can cause a lot of concerns. And I don't want to give Juneau any more excuse to move money out of Anchorage Bolt than they already have. So we need to have those discussions before you start pulling triggers.
Could you set some up with
Yeah,
CRW when
absolutely.
we
Yeah,
do
we're
Yeah.
already, I mean, we're
Yeah.
still catching up on sleep from Tuesday night, but basically we're ready to move forward on what the next steps are.
Yeah, I'm totally, you'll
Please,
count me in.
let's do that and sit down.
Yeah.
Because the purpose and need and the environmental documents and everything that was set in place a long time ago is still moving forward. I think that's what really Mr. Baskey was saying. And we are starting to buy property now.
That's not what he said. He said, "You're a juggernaut that can't be stopped."
That's just
He's a fighter pilot, I understand now.
But if he said we were fighter pilots, I think the
Yes,
assembly would have been a little confused. but-
Anyway, I think we need to have some follow-up discussions.
Thank you.
And I would really reach out and hope that you would
Yeah,
take us up on that offer, so we can come to a better solution for the neighborhood.
Plan, yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Any other comments? General information comments? Any comments from the committee in general to add?
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any public comments at all of any nature? Yes, sir.
This is oddball. I don't know if it relates, but in 11,000 days, say they put 17,329 towns and cities in craft design. How much more land do they want to occupy before they establish a Starfleet occupied realm?
No idea.
That had no relation, right?
Yeah, I don't know the answer either.
All right, cool.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
You had one more, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
My name is Eugene Carl Hayman. I live in New Hampshire Valley. Follow the public process. When the public process done quickly, decision made by the governing body, it's more like in the public interest. Approximately a week ago tonight, I was in this room, and it was the Public Transit Advisory Board meeting. A lot more public and tenants. I guess everyone here is more like the state and local, whatever government. But these seats were filled with people who had very difficulty coming into the room for accessibility of all places. The elevator was not working. I heard several reports of problems on buses. And I started to this key thing. When I'm hearing what this city has created as far as transit needs, it's created more lip service and saying, we're going to do this. But as everyone in the state knows, we are in a state budget crisis. And what I fear is going to happen is the ones who need the system the most, okay, are going to be situations going to more cuts in that area. But we've created a transit system in the city that barely doesn't even meet the needs of the people who have no other choice of getting around. Now, there's going to be projects, more and more projects talk about the automobile, building this because of the traffic situation. If you go in the direction of moving more money and making a program of public transit a real thing, that means people will say, hey, I want to take that transit. But it's only really meant for the people who have no other choice. And the end result is we're basically following a position, the municipality of Anchorage is saying the car is priority and the bus is not. So until you do that situation, you're going to be facing a situation of big financial costs on road projects. But if you take those cars off the road and move in that direction and provide a real alternative to public transit, then it'll be less costly in a situation where we're all trying to figure out where the dollar's going to come from. And all due respect, I was right on topic, by the way, with the chair. This meeting is a serious question. And to remind you, the violations of public involvement affects federal funding. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public at all? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Meeting is adjourned. Oh.